Me all right? Perfect. How's everybody doing at BSides today? Thank you for good. Thank you for coming to one of the last talks. I'm David Bressler, and this presentation is about how to leverage Maltego within internal enterprise environment. Okay. Generally, Maltego is kind of used for gathering information from publicly available sources on the internet, but let's move that functionality into a enterprise environment, right? So a little bit about me. I'm a security consultant for GuidePoint Security. I like to make things, break things. I have a little alphabet soup. I'm Boston Link on Twitter. You can always say hello. And all of my code that you'll see presented here is on my GitHub account. So if you want to just kind of look at the code or kind of play around, feel free. So how many people know what Maltego is? Awesome. And how many people have actually used Maltego? Perfect. How many people have developed transforms for Maltego? Excellent. So just to get everybody on the same page, Maltego, created by Paterva out of South Africa, information gathering, intelligence type of tool, reconnaissance, and it's a really nice visual representation of data, right? I find it pretty sexy. And it's really customizable of what data you can bring in, okay? So why Maltego in the enterprise? First of all, single tool to gather information from different devices within your enterprise, as well as you can do a high-level analysis on that data, right? You can also easily write custom transforms with different APIs, and my main thing is just think outside of the box, right? What type of data would be valuable to kind of visualize? So kind of quick rundown, Maltego transforms, they're back-end code or remote code that gathers the data and outputs it into a Maltego graph at a high level. It creates what are called entities, and every one of these items you see on this sample graph is an entity, right? So BSidesBoston.com, that's an entity. Everything else in this graph is an entity. And it shows relationships, right? So I can see these are kind of built-in transforms. And going back a bit, I kind of jumped around, but so there are two types of transforms, remote and local, right? And I kind of shipped built in with remote. So remote transforms pretty much run on remote web application servers. And think of that as that web server acting kind of as a proxy for your Maltego client. So every time you right-click and say run this transform within Maltego, your client will actually request that server to run that transform, and that server will output that data back to your client. Local transforms are pretty much the same thing as remote transforms. The only thing is they run on your local system. Totally different, right? So they're running on your local system that you're running your Maltego client on. Real quick, these are a couple examples of a couple of transform packs that I wrote to kind of output attacking IP addresses and if they have any signatures within Palo Alto. So overall, if you're trying to develop transforms, which transform should you use, right? That's the big question. It really depends on your goal and architecture overall. If you're trying to integrate with internal systems and internal tools, definitely local transforms all the way, or an internal TDS server, which is that remote web application server pretty much that runs your transform for you, except for it's not on the internet, it's in-house on your local LAN. External data sources, I'd say, local or remote. I'd probably go with remote transforms, just so I don't have to push out code. I could have that code running, just on an external web server and have multiple people use it. So there's several types of modules, Python modules, PHP modules that help you write transform packs, right? My personal favorite is the Canary framework. It just really, it deals with all the output for you, right? So personally, I don't like XML. I'm just not a fan. I don't like building my own XML. I don't like outputting it. Don't really like any of that. So I could use Canary to actually just focus on the logic of my code and parsing that data that I'm trying to input into a graph. It's really scalable and just really easy to install transforms across the board. So I'm sorry. So overall, why integrate other tools, right, within Maltego? First of all, because it's awesome, right? Second of all, you can actually see the value of your data, right? So say if you have multiple data sets and you can compare those multiple data sets within one graph and say, what relationships do these data sets, these different data sets have, if any, right? You can easily pivot from internal data, say, okay, I integrated my IDS solution. It has a signature for this external IP address that's communicating with these hosts on my LAN. Now let me gain more information, external information on that external host, if any, right? By pivoting and utilizing built-in transforms or other transform packs. Make sense? Perfect. So some of my personal projects that at another position that I had that I integrated with Palo Alto Networks, kind of to give you a nice visual of their top attacker vulnerability, virus, whatever it flags, out into a Maltego graph, right, for the past 24 hours. Little example of that, this example, top attacker report. And where it all fits in is, remember, multiple internal data sets, right? So if I have this, and there are multiple external IPs here, and even internal IPs, I can say, all right, if I have a full packet capture solution within my environment, and I have that integrated into Maltego, I can just pivot from one of these IPs and say, are any other signatures or any other flags or files or anything else involved with those sessions, right? Going to NW Maltego. NW Maltego was one of my first projects that integrated NetWitness within Maltego that allowed you to actually query the NetWitness API for metadata pulled out of network sessions. So a quick example of that, I don't know how well that looks to you guys. Well, so I started with the internal IP address, and it flagged a emerging threat snort signature within NetWitness. I queried on that alert to say, in that session that created that alert, what file types were in that? And this is the output of the file types, which you can't really see, is pretty blurry, but it's Java jar files, Windows executables, and whatnot, and a few images as well. Further, I pivoted from that alert to the external IP address, right, within that same session, along with any other internal hosts that may have been communicating with that IP. And then keep on going to what other alerts may have been flagged in those other sessions to that external IP address. And this you see is a black hole exploit kit alert with a PDF file associated with. Now, remember, multiple data sets. If I pull all these files from these sessions out of NetWitness or pretty much any packet capture solution you have, I always like to run it through the Cuckoo sandbox. So I wrote another integration to remember one tool, multiple data sets, to actually point to a file and say, run this through the Cuckoo sandbox for analysis, and let me know when that analysis is finished. So it would output the analysis ID, and you can query down and say, all right, is any signatures associated with this file? What type of files were possibly dropped on that system within that analysis? Or did this file try to communicate with any external IPs? Okay. Wrapping it all together, if it did communicate with any external IPs, you can always pivot back and go, say, back into your NetWitness transforms and run more queries to see on the actual sessions. All right. So, perfect. So when I was writing this talk and kind of putting all my ideas together, I said, kind of want to do a demo. I don't really have all these, production systems on hand because I just recently switched jobs, but I wouldn't have them on hand anyway. So I said, you know what? Let me just, especially at BSides, right? Yeah, let me VPN into work. So I just downloaded a quick Nexpose Community Edition, kind of just Nexpose Community Edition, because I work with Nexpose a lot as well, and I can leverage it in my daily work. And I started to write some transforms for the Nexpose API. So Maltego pretty much allows you to launch a vulnerability scan from a host that you've been doing some reconnaissance on within Maltego. It allows you to display port services, service versions, or fingerprints, vulnerabilities, Metasploit modules, exploit DB exploits. All right. Just made this public on my GitHub account as well, so you can always download that. So, that being said, let's get into the demos. All right, I don't know how well this is going to work, but all my transform packs utilizes the Canary framework. So within the Canary framework, once you install it and install a transform pack, you're going to have a configuration file directory within your home directory, right? So right there, Canary. And what that holds is your transform pack configuration files. So if any of the transform packs need, IP addresses or whatever, any configuration, that's where it's going to be stored, right? Just quick note on that. And without those configuration files, none of this will work. I'm just in kind of my home segregated lab right now. So right here. So now this new transform pack gives you the ability, all right, well, I got all this other information. I got DNS information, I got who is information, I got all this other, you know, kind of passive or active reconnaissance information on a host. Now, what if you add in active vulnerability scanning? Yeah, sure, it's not perfect. It probably won't identify all the vulnerabilities, what vulnerability solution does, but hey, I find it kind of useful. So I could just launch this scan. Hit the wrong button. So I can just launch this scan, and what that's going to do, going to create a site within Nextpose, and actually start the scan, obviously. So we can see the scan's running right here, and what that transform is doing right now is it's polling Nextpose's API and saying, what's the status of the scan? What's the status of the scan? And once the scan completes, it's going to output a scan entity, right? No, it just keeps polling. So to kind of save time, don't really want to wait here and for that scan to be done. So this is what the output's going to look like, right? Now I can pivot off of this site, this scan site, and say, all right, this graph is just going to look horrible because of my resolution, but hey. I can either do 2 vulnerabilities or open ports, right? Start with vulnerabilities. And this box is metasploitable too, so it's pretty vulnerable. As you can see, it got a lot. So, kind of to drill down a little more, I want to differentiate the vulnerabilities that have publicly available exploits against the vulnerabilities that do not, right? So I'm just going to run pretty much do any of these vulnerabilities have exploits, Metasploit modules or exploit DB exploits, right? And Maltego is just going to do its magic. Transforms are running on the back end. Perfect. So now I have a fairly big map or graph of vulnerabilities that have exploits versus vulnerabilities that do not have exploits, right? I personally like to keep my maps a little small, or my graphs. So what I'm going to do is just copy. So now I have a graph of all the vulnerabilities that pretty much don't have exploits versus, once I delete these, versus vulnerabilities that do, right? And you could have multiple views, whatever your preference is, to kind of say, all right, well, this is pretty cool. I can also select any one of these, go into the detailed views, and kind of see, all right, what's the skill level of that Metasploit module and the actual URL. So I can just pull that up on the fly. Same with the exploit DB. Exploits, as you can see. And same with the vulnerabilities, right? In addition, I mean, all these transform packs will work with the community edition of Maltego, but the commercial version of Maltego has a nice, in my opinion, it really has a nice nice report export feature, where I can just export all that information on that graph and actually have this as pretty much a record, right, of any reconnaissance I did on that host or any vulnerabilities that were, you know, found during that scan.
So that explore information, is it coming from Maltego or is it coming from Nextpose?
Which information?
Like when you click on one of the dots.
All this?
Shows
This is all coming from Nextpose.
Nextpose.
Yep.
So Nextpose says based on the scan we run earlier.
Absolutely.
What's the role Maltego playing here? It's just generating this graph.
Exactly. Maltego is just inputting the data and presenting it in a visual manner. My backend code is pulling that data from Nextpose, right? To kind of move forward, clean this up a little bit. And also, you know, we could go back here and just quickly to ports, you know, enumerate all the open ports on that host. I can select the ports, kind of, all right, what services did Nextpose identify as running on those ports? All right. And just kind of represent that in a nice visual manner as well. I mean, in my opinion, you know, is this a must-have? No, not at all. But is it a nice-to-have? Absolutely. All right. And then further, I can I can actually pivot on the services and say, well, select the services and say, show me the vulnerabilities associated with that individual service, as well as once that outputs, show me the exploits from those vulnerabilities, just like I showed you in the other graph. Cool? All right. So to kind of put it all together, in my opinion, working with multiple internal data sets in a visual manner does multiple things for you and there's multiple value to it, right? You can easily compare the two different data sets or however many data sets you import into Maltego fairly easily and come up with high-level conclusion of what may be happening. It could also say if an analyst is using this in an investigation type of manner, they can actually pinpoint, data a lot easier that they actually have to dig through a little more than just looking at kind of multiple tools, multiple logs, and everything else. Because, I mean, overall, nobody really likes looking at something like this. You know, you could kind of grep it out, but this will kind of make, at least me, look like this. You know, and I don't like looking like that. And that's pretty much it. I just want to give a special thanks to Guy Point Security for sponsoring Boston BSides, for employing me, and Paterva, Nadim Duba, he's the man, Rich Popson, Canary Framework, and everybody involved in the Canary Framework and developing with it. You know, if you're interested in this stuff, definitely check it out. You know, write some scripts, write some transforms. And questions, feedback, anything? Yes?
So I'd be interested in deploying this to a decentralized logging system, something like ESM or Splunk.
Yep.
Have you done that at all?
Personally, I've thought of it. My thoughts are pretty much that will be a pretty highly customized transform set for that organization, right? Because everybody's inputting different logs, and it'll be really hard to release, you know, just one general transform set. I mean, yeah, you could release maybe like a base. Yeah, exactly, and then people can add on to that, you know, to customize to their specific environment. But I mean, some organizations don't have people to do that, right? Exactly. Exactly. Anybody else? Yes.
Just curious about Maltego, if there's a way of exporting the results to a format that could be published on the web.
Yep.
What, I didn't catch that. One more
I
time.
was just wondering if there's an easy way of exporting Maltego output to a format that could be published on the web and still be interactive.
I mean, you could export, I believe, to CSV, and the Canary framework actually has multiple, I forget off the top of my head, but you can transfer a graph format into, I believe, CSV and another type of format.
No, I meant like an interactive version on your website.
I mean, you could output a image, interactive, not that I'm aware of it, you know. Anybody else? Yes.
How complicated is it to write transforms?
I'll show you. Actually, it's a good question. It really depends what you're trying to do, right? So this is my GitHub account, and these are pretty much my transform packs. So, I mean, if you know any type of like scripting language, it's fairly easy. You can just export it to XML, you know, have the output be XML in XML that Maltego will read. But utilizing the Canary framework, I mean, it's pretty much a Python package. And so if I go in here and say, well, these are all my transforms for Maltego. And within that, you know, it's pretty much just parsing data and outputting it, right? So it's maybe a little learning curve, but it depends where you are with kind of scripting in general.
You'll follow kind of a similar template format, like you're always going to have like a dot transform.
Absolutely, absolutely. If you utilize the Canary framework, yes, they will. They'll all pretty much look like this. Anybody else? All right. That's all I got. Thank you.